Good morning, honorable members. I hope you are all well in this fairly cold Republic of Cape Town. Honorable Bateman, can you hear me there? Honorable Bateman, are you there?
We can hear you, Chair.
Oh, okay. Well, if you can hear me, that means I'm fairly audible. I see Honorable Mkonto is here. I see...
morning, Chair.
Morning, Honorable Mkonto. I would like for us to start the meeting, considering the fact that there are budget votes that are taking place in committee today, and a number of other meetings that are taking place. So I want us to really get on with the business of today. We don't have a long agenda because today is really just about the public hearings on the Eskom bill. So I want us to really keep that as a focus. So let me just, before I begin these public hearings, Sheila, will you project the agenda there in front of us there, please? That is pretty much all there is on the agenda. It's COSATU today and deliberations on this issue. So with that in mind, can I ask for a member who would like to, this is a public hearing, so is there a member who would like to move for the adoption of the agenda?
Yes, Honourable Chair, I'll move for the adoption of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Bateman. Is there a member who will second the adoption?
I second, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honourable Mkonto. With that in mind, I'd like to open a meeting just by acknowledging there are a number of apologies that are before us. Mashile, can you take us through the apologies, please?
Thank you, President. Good morning, everyone on the platform, honorable members and esteemed guests. We do have an apology from the Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance, Honorable Sarupen, as well as Mr. Khanyane, who is attending another committee of Parliament. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Those being the apologies that are before us. Are there any other apologies from any other member who would like to put them forward? I do not see any hand raised. I will assume that those are the only apologies that we note for today in that regard. Let me just, while I'm at this point, honorable members, and I'll deal with announcements a little bit later on today, but given the postponement of our yesterday meeting, I really took great exception to this issue and absolute displeasure in this regard. And ultimately had written a letter, as you would have all been seen, to the Department of Social Development with the Minister. We have subsequently received a letter of apology from the Ministry, and therefore I will then, I just wanted to read that to a record, is that they raised a concern. They apologized profusely for missing the meeting. So we're in the process of trying to reschedule that particular appointment, to which I will communicate to members as we deal with announcements. But in the meantime, Honorable Bateman, I see your hand is up. Is there anything from your end?
Thanks, Honourable Chair. Sorry, I did lower my hand. I was just inquiring. No problem. Thank you.
Okay, great. I think we can then proceed in this regard. Given that today is about public hearings, we have got a presentation from COSATU on the respective bill. Is the member Mr. Parks? I assume it is Mr. Parks, I see is on the platform. Mr. Parks, welcome. You have sent us the presentation, of which deals in part with the bill and then in others with SOEs in general. So I'm just being very cautious to say that we will then naturally take into cognizance the matters that pertain to this particular bill. But I want to allow you to go through your presentation as you put it forward, and then allow for members to have deliberations with you on that point. I just thought you should be alive to the facts as they are in committee, because you can give as much input as you can. The dilemma is obviously the committee can only deliberate on the matters that pertain to the bill at hand in and of itself, and then there'll be some aspects on appropriations that we can take going forward. So, Mr. Parks, let me hand over to you. Welcome. Because you have sole preserved today, I will give you the latitude of time, so you can have between 15 to 20 minutes or so.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. No, thanks, Chair. I almost feel slightly sheepish to be the only one presenting. So I almost want to apologize for disturbing members with our pontifications. But Chair, I think we do appreciate the important work that SCOA does, and I think we felt it is still important just to share some views. We do appreciate, Chair, that this might almost seem a little bit like deja vu for yourself and many members, given that we've had 3 budgets this year, and it's been a bit of a journey. But I think nonetheless, Chair, we do appreciate the time. I think from our side, Chair, we don't need to go into all the nitty-gritties because they have discussed quite a few of these issues quite a bit. But just to say, as COSATU, we view the budget as a key intervention to really deal with the many socioeconomic challenges we collectively face as a society. And I think we all have the same vantage point across party line, across stakeholders. From a very slow, economic growth rate for the past decade plus, our extremely high levels of unemployment, especially for young people, and of course, the resulting levels of inequality and poverty. I think we've all felt the rising cost of living in the past few years. And I think we've all seen really the aging infrastructure and, of course, struggling public and municipal services, SOEs, etc. And just generally a bit of a sense of despair and hopelessness amongst many across society, especially the poor. So we really do hope that, our vantage point around the appropriation bill, the Eskom debt relief bill to a lesser extent, was about a move away from budget cuts, which have really made it very difficult for many departments to provide public services that society requires. And also similarly, I think we'd have hoped to see more interventions around rebuilding public services. We do think that there are some good aspects to it around stimulus into the economy, giving support, for example, through DTIC or small business development to industrial export sectors. We have been heartened by a real positive shift from the previous budgets away from cuts to public employment programs. And of course, Chair, I think we must really appreciate Treasury, and I think also the interventions of Parliament too, around making sure that SARS has been given more resources to deal with tax evasion. I think fundamentally for us, Chair, we were not keen on the proposed tax hikes, VAT, like all members. We really felt the more appropriate way is actually to capacitate SARS to deal with 1/3 of tax evasion. Chair, I don't think we need to go too much into revenue. Obviously, that belongs to the fiscal framework, as you said, but just to appreciate the work members have done around scrapping the VAT hike. But of course, we would have loved to see PIT being adjusted. We would have loved to see fuel tax relief being extended. Chair, I won't go into this slide. It just remembers background information around alternative revenue proposals. We think we should have a longer discussion with, as Parliament, with Treasury, etc., to see what is the sweet spot, so to speak. But Chair, I think just some proposals, because obviously when we come as COSATU, when we say we would love government to do X, Y, and Z, the natural question for members would always be, it's fine, but where do you get the funds from? And besides, giving support to SARS and a broader discussion on alternative revenue options, we think there is a need to have discussions with the developmental financial institutions like DBSA, the IDC, the PIC, about them taking up a greater share of the economic infrastructure projects that can help lessen the burden upon the fiscus. And similarly with the CETAs, the NSF, the DFIs to also contribute towards the public employment programs. There is already some elements of that in this budget, but we think the space, and given the need to increase that, and similarly around Kenji Freka, utilized to continue to give support to the fiscus. So we do appreciate we need to mobilize funds for the state to fill this mandate. Chair, I think for us on the public services, obviously a chunk of the appropriation bill is always going to be around the wage bill. I think we know, Chair, I don't want to bombard members with things we've repeated many times, but we feel that the wage bill has declined significantly. It's now at about 31%. The last 2 years it's come down for 35% of the budget. I think we've had this debate before about that the number of teachers to learners or nurses or doctors to patients or police to society hasn't kept pace with population growth. We've seen the real impact of many departments, like Home Affairs, for example, we have a 60% vacancy rate, and thus there's a real strain in the capacity of the state to deliver public services in these departments. So I think, Chair, we want to view public services as a strategic tool to empower society, and we should be viewed as an investment in society and the economic growth of the nation. Chair, we think there's stability of the public service agreement, which gives breathing space with regards to budget projections for the next 3 years, gives breathing space for struggling police officers and nurses and so forth. And there is some quite positive allocation to rebuilding education, health, and so forth. We had been frustrated that from budget 1 to budget 3, there was a reduction in some of the filling of vacancies, like doctors from 1,600 to 800. But there is some positive allocations around teachers, police, and so forth. We hope those will help, and we hope this is a sign that we are changing or shifting. Chair, I think there is positive allocations too with regards around the education allocations to ECD. Not clear timeframes, but we hope that will be expedited. And of course, there are positive allocations through the Department of Electricity around smart electricity meters. There's positive allocations towards NHI as well over the MTEF. But of course, we are concerned about some of the cuts to human settlements, especially with regards to informal settlements, given the perennial migration of people from rural areas to the cities in search of jobs. Chair, I think we do welcome the signal by Treasury about auditing ghost posts or wherever they might be across the state that can save money. And of course, it means we can fill those vacancies with warm bodies and thus help improve public service capacity. We do think there is a need, Chair, to have a signal from the leadership of government about reductions on what we spend on the executives, whether it's travel, whether it's advertising, catering. If you want to tell society to tighten the belt, then we also need to lead from the front. Chair, on some of the SOEs, I think, Chair, we must. It's easy to moan, to complain about government, and that is natural in a democracy. But I think we must also acknowledge where there's been progress. I think we've come a long way over the past 2 years with regards to Eskom, to ending load shedding. We're seeing a stabilization of transit, a rebuilding of metro rail, a revival of SAA. We are still deeply concerned about lack of coherent plans around Denel, SABC, the post office, the post bank. But there is some positive allocation in the appropriation bill to the post office. We hope that'll help. Chair, your twin sister committee, SCOPA, has done a lot of work around the Road Accident Fund. We're looking forward to that inquiry because the RAF, it remains a weak point with 400 billion rand worth of liabilities in the state. But I think, Chair, there is some progress overall in the front. Not enough, but I think a shift from where we were a decade ago. I think, Chair, we just need to see government giving more support to the SOEs, from deployment of competent management, the skilling, dealing with corruption, crime, cable theft, etc., and of course investing in infrastructure. We would really hope to see the RAF bills come back to Parliament because, again, they provide a pathway to turn the RAF around. Chair, on the Eskom debt relief bill, we had to spend a lot of time as COSATU with Treasury, with colleagues in government in 2019, 2020 around the Eskom debt relief project. We were quite appreciative that we managed to find this 253 billion rand worth of debt relief to Eskom, and that's provided a significant breathing space for Eskom to focus on investment in maintenance, investment in infrastructure, and that has thus helped to ease the load shedding. There is a reduction in this Eskom debt relief bill of the debt allocated for relief to Eskom. And look, Chair, we're always happy to see less debt burden on the state, etc. But we do hope this won't come at the burden of Eskom. We do hope it won't infringe upon Eskom's capacity, as it is so fragile, to invest in infrastructure and to really ensure we are out of the load shedding woods. But Chair, I think whilst we appreciate the work we have come through with Eskom, it is still fragile. And I think one of the real challenges we're having with industry, especially the mining industry, the foundries, is electricity just simply too expensive? So there is a need to continue to give support to Eskom on that front. Chair, just I think on the infrastructure through the appropriations, there's good allocations. We are concerned that we don't really seem to be allocating enough to support SMEs, industrialization, export industries, not given the levels of economic growth and unemployment. Those are things we should really be seeing creatively. How can we ramp it up? So proposal, Chair, really is, for Parliament to really hold departments accountable around the infrastructure allocations. But also I think, Chair, broader discussion, especially as we head towards MTBPS in October, how can we mobilize greater financial support for SMEs, for industrial projects, for export industries, be it from the fiscus, be it from the DFIs, or be it from the private sector too. But 40 billion rand when they have 1% economic growth rate, it just is not enough to really turn the corner in that regard, Chair. And this is a discussion we've had for quite a long time. Chair, just getting towards the end, I think there is good allocations around some of the relief, social grant allocations above inflation. Obviously, our disappointment about not adjusting SOD grants for inflation for 4 out of the past 5 years. But there is positive allocations around ramping up public employment programs. But we do worry that some of them are not budgeted beyond this year. Chair, and then I think lastly on that one, again, we do need to have a broader discussion about how can you pull together resources for different public employment programs to really ensure efficiency of spending, that we deal with corruption, and we really ensure that people receive the skills and the training and experience they require to find work upon exit. So that's a presentation short covering the appropriation Eskom debt relief bills. Apologies, Chair, I know much of this is deja vu for members, but thank you for giving us space and time. Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, members, who worked during this budget process.
If something bears repeating, it bears repeating, Mr. Parks. So let me allow members who want to engage to ask respective questions. Please, I will recognize hands at this point. Is there any member who would like to ask questions of clarity, keeping in mind COSATU do not account to this committee, other than the proposals they have raised. So I see Honorable Mkonto. Okay. Is there any other member? Okay, let me allow Honorable Mkonto. You can proceed then.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you, Chair, honorable members. Mr. Is Matthews, ne?
Yes.
And our colleagues. I want to say, Chair, when I was serving under the Portfolio Committee of Employment and Labor, I used to be a follower of Mr. Matthews, reading all the statements that he writes, and every step of what he is doing. Chair, I want to welcome the presentation first. As you are saying, Chair, there is a need to constantly talk to them as a partner. He talked about the high unemployment amongst the youth and the economic stimulus. And my understanding of COSATU is that they represent both workers in the public and the private sector. And I have observed, Chair, in the last few days that there is a pervasive act of hiring of illegal immigrants in the private sector. So I want to know from them as to what is it that they are advising the Department of Employment and Labor to enforce their laws and fight that scourge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mkonto. Is there another member who would like to raise a question? So, Mr. Parks, just some key questions for me. The first is, you raised this question about an end to austerity. Can I presume the inference is that the previous budgets were austerity-driven budgets? I just want to understand and your understanding certainly of that school of thought, what government expenditure looks like, etc., because it's a contested space. Now, I noticed that in one of your proposals, you raised the question of ending corruption and giving capacity to SOEs. What would be your views on whether the state capture commission that was headed up by Judge Zondo, has it been a success or a failure? I'd like to understand it from your perspective. Thirdly, I agree with you. I welcome the allocation of funding towards infrastructure on areas like Transnet and rail. I think it would be good for workers to be able to travel to work at a cheaper rate. It just means disposable income is betterly, it's more available. But as all of us would have experienced yesterday, fuel has gone up significantly. And therefore, for many of the people who are traveling to and from work today, that cost will be more expensive, and it's going to be passed on to consumers once taxis kick into this thing. So I want to understand from your perspective, the last question I wanted to raise is, you welcome the presidential employment stimulus, but as a labor union, I'm always fascinated by this question of saying, is there not a study from your end? Every department has a employment stimulus of some sort. If you went to agriculture, they will tell you straight up, no, we've got this small farmer support and it employs young people to do this. If you went to health, they've got healthcare community workers. They pay through EPWP. If you went to teaching or education, they'll tell you they've got teacher support things, which I think you're raising this thing. If you went to whatever, it feels and it looks like that these things are A, not accounted for, B, not aggregated collectively, and more seriously, they become these things that every department has that is fashionable, but is adding no improvement as it pertains to young people that are not in employment, not in education, and not in training. So I'd like to hear your perspective on this issue.
Yeah, I can go, Chair. No, thanks, Chair, and thanks to Honorable Mkhonto. Chair, I think we want to appreciate Honorable Mkhonto's words of encouragement. And I think, Chair, we will share your sentiments, Honorable Mkhonto's sentiments, that this is the discussion, this is the journey. We don't expect, the budget to be changed overnight. We don't expect solutions to be arrived at immediately. But these are complex, these are very painful issues. And I think, Chair, we've seen a very positive shift among members of Parliament across party lines, increasingly looking at solutions. That's a positive thing. Of course, we are frustrated, as I'm sure all members are, about at times how government doesn't move fast enough to address many issues. And there is a real consequence to economic growth, to poverty, to unemployment, or to the capacity of the state, etc. Chair, I think Honorable Mkhonto raised a very critical, difficult issue. The issue of, I think really you can see in South Africa in the last decade plus, it's almost a flood of undocumented migrant labor. We're not alone in that regard. Europe, the US, most industrial economies have the same challenge. even other African countries too. Nigeria will have the same challenge. I think the difficulty for us is that you combine that with already very high levels of unemployment. So it becomes a difficult thing. There's no amount of jobs that South Africa can create to satisfy South Africa's unemployment rate, let alone that for the entire continent or even that for other continents. And we need to find the right balance. Parliament amended the Labour Relations Act about 12 years ago to just affirm that all workers, even undocumented migrant workers, have the right to be protected, have the right for their labor rights to be observed, etc. Of course, that doesn't always happen because if you have an unemployment rate, for example, in Zimbabwe of, 84%, whatever it is, or you have a total collapse of an economy in Mozambique or Somalia, etc., we all know the issues. Then, of course, people will come to South Africa, long distances, at great risk, and they'll be willing to accept any job, even if it doesn't pay minimum wage, even if all the labor rights, the health and safety rights, rights to overtime, all of those rights are ignored. And of course, those workers will be vulnerable because of a worker, in that instance, a farm worker from Malawi complained about the right to minimum wage. That farmer can just dismiss them. And what will that worker do? Most of those workers are reluctant to join trade unions because they live an underground life. So it's almost a race to the bottom. It is a powder keg, Chair, because when you have a 43% unemployment rate, when we have a 72% youth unemployment rate, when unemployment rate is higher based upon the color of one's skin, if one lives in a township or a rural area, and then you see a lot of jobs, low-skilled jobs that could have easily gone to absorb young people, especially in townships, whether it's at petrol stations, at restaurants, at construction sites, at farms, etc. It does become a powder keg, and it is going to explode in violence, xenophobic violence, as we've seen. It was very difficult for police to manage it in that scenario. So, Chair, I think what are the solutions? And Chair, the US built a wall. I remember, Chair, during COVID, we built a fence, and I think that fence was stolen quite quickly. Chair, I don't know what are the actual solutions. There are some things we are doing. We need to do more. So the Department of Labor has increased the number of inspectors from about 2,000. They've hired 10,000. Well, they're hiring 10,000 now. Be another 10,000 next year. That's good. We need to get stronger labor law compliance. That's positive. Employers must play their part. We also need to have a better integration program with SADC to help Zimbabwe, help Mozambique, etc. But again, also other countries need to assist. Chair, to your questions about austerity, I know it's a difficult thing. We appreciate that fiscus has extreme pressures, many competing, all legitimate demands, but we have seen many departments over the past few years and government, had the clear thesis of reducing expenditure. If you look at it, sometimes it was real cuts, sometimes it was just cuts in terms of inflation or population. Our bigger concern was frontline departments, education, health, police. And you can see many instances, the police headcount, Chair, fell from about 208,000 to about 172,000 in the past decade. It's now beginning to turn around for the positive again. We have seen a rising teacher to learner ratio, etc. Chair, I think with us, we also disagree with Treasury that it shouldn't just be a blanket cuts. Let's rather reprioritize the frontline services. We agree there is a need to reduce fat here and there, but let's also do so in a way which doesn't hurt the state. But also, Chair, to have a different philosophy that if you have an efficient home affairs where workers can get their IDs immediately, they don't sacrifice days of wages queuing. It improves workplace productivity, etc. So there's a benefit to the economy and thus to the revenue in the long term. Chair, to your question about the Zondo Commission, look, we want to be positive about things. We have seen a few prosecutions, but I think if we're honest, Chair, it's been very disappointing given the price tag for the Zondo Commission. I think, Chair, we've been bitterly disappointed as COSATU with the National Prosecuting Authority. It's fine to go and charge a politician, a mayor, whomever. But if that person 5 years later has not been brought to court, there's no conviction, or if the judges themselves are tossing out cases because of sloppy preparations, that raises deep concerns. I think in this year's budget, Chair, there is some additional allocations for prosecutors. I think it's about 250 or so, if I'm right. We hope that will make a difference. We hope that additional police officers will begin to help, but we also need to overhaul these institutions. If you have a third of police vehicles not working, that's a crisis point, We do need to have a discussion about the performance of the State Security Agency. We should have been more active on these issues. But Chair, I know you are a positive person. We can see there's positive turnarounds in SARS, and that model should be replicated across the state, filling vacancies, appointing competent management, dealing with corruption, investing in infrastructure. Chair, the previous parliamentary term passed the Auditing Amendment Act. We're beginning to see some signs of that act being used to hold the assets of offending officials who are involved in corruption. That's a positive sign. Chair, on your point about the cost of living, there's nothing we can do about the oil price. There'll always be a conflict in the Middle East. It's a guarantee. And we'll be held hostage. But we think there are things we can do to insulate ourselves, to lessen our dependency upon petrol, on oil prices, etc. So reopening metro rail lines, that's key to 10 million commuters in our cities. Getting transit working, that's key to food and so forth. Also, that long promised discussion of the current and previous ministers for electricity, for energy. Can we reduce the fuel price taxes, which consume about a third of the fuel price? Can we fix the REF, which depends upon the fuel price levy? Can we look at expanded allocation of free electricity and water to indigent households? And of course, giving support to public transport, especially to taxis, which are the backbone of public transport. Chair, I think to the last question, to your question, Chair, about public employment programs. Chair, look, I mean, we have 60 million people who are working. We have 12 million people who are unemployed. We do need to have these public employment programs for the short and medium term. We think some of them give a good model, like the presidential employment stimulus, which provides a minimum wage, practical skills and experience to help people to acquire the confidence and the skills they need to find jobs when they exit it. That's a model we need to replicate and see, can we expand it across the state, not just teaching assistants, but link it to skills people will require to find jobs long term. Your EPWP and CWP don't do that. They often just dig ditches, and that means you have a perennial kind of rut for those workers. But we do think we need a longer discussion. Can we ramp up the funding for it? Can we really overhaul it and make sure it actually helps to reduce unemployment? And I think for us, that's one of the key things, that and the industrial financing projects are the two kind of key things that should do. Chair, let me stop there. And I think, yeah, hopefully I've answered the questions, Chair. Thanks to yourself and Honourable Contra.
I mean, I think more than it also being a question of whether the Zondo Commission was a waste or not, I do think I'd like to see, particularly COSATU, as a strong advocate against this issue of corruption, because we are paying for the sins of the past. And we will continue to pay, because once the culture is set, that doesn't mean that the corruption ended at the tabling of the report. It just means that we've now carried on. Honorable Galega Mazibuko, I'm going to give you the last question, and then I want to finish that.
Thank you very much, Chair. I thought I would be covered by Honorable Mkonto's question, but I want to do a follow-up. Chair, the issue of employment of undocumented migrants cannot just be a by the way response, especially from COSATU. COSATU is a member of NEDLEC as well, if I am not mistaken. But I don't hear the voice of COSATU to the employers who employ undocumented migrants. Chair, you go to all the China's malls, at least the ones that I normally go to in Johannesburg, and you don't find anyone South African working in these big companies, big shops of the Chinese and other institutions, private sector. They employ, and if we don't nip this thing on the butt with the assistance of COSATU at a network level as well as at the floor level, we are not going to deal with the issue of unemployment. And lastly, Chair, we can allocate budget as much as possible. But if the behavior is not changing, the behavior of the workers, if you still find police that are sleeping a job, the story I saw yesterday for Hillbrow, where the Nyaupe people got into the station and they took the pistols and everything and the dockets of the police whilst the police were sleeping, and so on. I mean, if the work ethic within the workers is not there, you can have as much budget as possible, but you will never see change. So I'm saying there has to be an encouragement at the shop floor for workers to also appreciate their government, appreciate that they've got the job. But it cannot just be by the way we respond and nothing is happening. One would want to hear the action on these issues. Thank you very much, Chair, and sorry for my voice. The flu is back. I'm coughing, but yeah, I'll soldier on. Thank you.
No, Honorable Galega Mazibuko, I think you gave me the flu. I have it myself, and you know, so it is. So I'm raising this concern as a motion. I'm going to move motions now. Mr. Parks, will you respond?
Chair, no, thanks, Chair. So just a couple of thoughts. So Chair, we had it at NEDLEC and it should come to Parliament soon. I think Cabinet approved it about a month ago. the Employee Services Amendment Bill, if I get the title of the name correct. So that's the Department of Labor bill, which seeks to enable the department to set quotas that in any workplace, I think it's no more than 20% of workers could be migrant workers. So that's number one. That's for companies larger than 10 employees. So micro companies are kept out because often those are family businesses. But any company which is more than 10 employees, no more than 20% can be migrant workers. It must be documented, not undocumented, obviously. Then the second one also enables the Department of Labor to say in certain sectors, so they want to have tighter quotas or even a complete ban. And we think that's important, Chair, because we have seen certain sectors literally just become overwhelmed by undocumented migrant labor. And again, often these are low sectors, low skilled sectors, often these are vulnerable sectors, etc. So the one difficulty is that we have very good labor laws, progressive, etc. I think most people wouldn't fault them. The difficulty is on enforcement, and you find this problem. It really is in certain sectors like agriculture. Organizing farm workers is very difficult. Access to farms often difficult. They're far apart, etc. Construction sites and so forth. Some of these are notorious sectors. So I think we managed with government to see some positive shifts in that regard. So the number of labor inspectors during COVID was about 1,200. That was increased during COVID to about 1,800. In March this year, the Minister of Labor, through the Presidential Employment Stimulus, is recruiting an additional 10,000. There'll be another 10,000 next year. So we really hope this will not be just for 2 years, but beyond that, because when you have 60 million or 70 million workers, you need to have more than 2,000 inspectors. Otherwise, the laws remain a mirage. The Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs is busy with the immigration bill, which also seeks to try to address some of the abuses we have seen with regards to some people abusing the refugee status, etc. So we hope that is going to assist. There's a national labor migration policy, which also speaks to these as well, which Cabinet approved recently. But all of these are fine, but if you don't have the capacity of the state to enforce them, then it remains a mirage. We are increasing our inspections, joint inspections with the Department of Labor, where they come with trade unions, because often you would find inspectors simply just going to meet HR and not talking to the workers about the issues. And I think, Chair, also that's why we've been making noise for the past while around making sure we give more support to the Defence Force, to the Border Management Authority, to the police, because if they don't have the resources, it's very difficult for them to enforce the law. I think Parliament too has been making useful noise in the Joint Standing Committee on Defence as well, about we're in a crisis point. And if we don't begin to turn things around, we're going to see things get worse. And I think also, Chair, that's the point the Minister has also been making in this year's budget cycle too, that we are cutting the bone in the state, and if we can't expect better results unless we begin to resource these critical institutions. Chair, I think the examples made about police officers sleeping, look, that's a management issue. And I think then the Portfolio Committee, for example, police, etc., need to hold those station commanders accountable, number one. But I think, Chair, also we should avoid the temptation to decampaign and with a broad brush stroke all the police. You see on average every week at least one police officer is killed. We have many police officers subject to extreme PTSD because of the violence they've been exposed to. Often it's very difficult for police officers when you have at least a third of police vehicles not working. If you go to the stations, you'll find the IT capacity. Chair, you'll be shocked at those computers. You would assume that they had been decommissioned in the 90s. You even wonder if they have access to internet. So there is a real need to shake up things in the police to make it a modern institution, to invest in the training, the skills, the IT capacity, etc., the intelligence capacity. Because what you can see right now, Chair, is crime is becoming entrenched, and I think the police often at times are demoralized. They feel they have little capacity to deal with it because they do not give them the tools, the support they need to address it. But I think, Chair, just lastly, all workers, I think, appreciate their jobs. All workers feel the pain of unemployment. On average, each worker supports about 7 relatives who don't have jobs. Many workers don't receive wage increases in the public sector or private sector, or they're below inflation. And of course, Chair, I think also to make the point that it's workers who are the backbone of the economy, and it's workers' pension funds who are the financial stimulus to the economy. Workers want to see things turn around, but also we need to give them the support and the tools to enable them to turn things around as well, Chair. But I think, Chair, we want to appreciate members giving us space. And I think, as you're saying, Chair, these are ongoing discussions. These are difficult issues, and I think we need to find practical solutions and to do so urgently to address them. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, members, for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks, and I appreciate the responses accordingly. That then concludes the deliberations on the presentation that has been brought forward by COSATU. We will then take the inputs into the appropriations bill and then go from there with honorable members, and then we'll proceed on that score. I'm going to close it at this point. Honorable members, let me also just, by virtue of communicating with committee, our job as a committee is not to get involved with necessarily the politics of the going-ons inside the Government of National Unity. All I've sought to seek is a legal opinion guiding whether, when we do the schedules of votes, what happens in an event where some don't pass and some do, given that this is a consultation on the appropriations bill. I've been guided by the NA table to say that the bill has to be adopted in its entirety if it is going to pass, and therefore it will also mean that if should it fail to pass in its entirety, it will have to return to this respective committee to then be processed from then on as consistent with the Money Bills and Related Matters Act. So I thought it is important for members to be appraised. We are really, well, I am personally as chair, committed to making sure that the appropriations bill is passed so that it can be passed on to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. And then we've just got to make sure that the bill from that point on can then proceed as it is. So I just thought I should just appraise members of the questions we have to be engaged with as we go forward. Honorable Wakelin.
Good morning, Chair. How are you doing?
I'm well.
My question, just quickly, you said you did get a legal opinion, or you're going to seek one? I just want clarity.
I've sought one, and that was the advice that I was given. I can hopefully, once it's all been written out, we'll send it.
Yeah, that's what I would request. If you can just give me a copy of that, please. Thanks.
With that in mind, honorable members, I thought let me appraise members of all the facts. That's it. In the light of that, I'll also, in the midst of that, confirm the letter of apology from. It's a letter apologizing from the Department of Social Development that equally so we've received. And we will work with the ManCom to try and reschedule that aspect so that we can consider the bill in due course. Honorable members, no further business on this particular meeting. I want to then, Mashile, I don't know if there's anything else on your end. I would like to move to close the meeting.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. The only thing that I have is an apology from the Honorable Kwankwa. He's on exam leave. We've just received an apology.
Noted, Honorable Mashile. Honorable Wakelin, your hand is up.
Yeah, my apologies, Chair. Just a question. I had a quick look at our program again for the next 2 weeks. I say there's nothing scheduled for next week. I just want to double check and confirm that. As we also got a by-election that we need to run. I just want to have a confirmation, please.
Yes, honorable member, what I'll do is we'll send a notice of activity. Mashila, I know there are a number of points, and next week, obviously, we've got votes with the president. I think it's not either next week or the week thereafter. It's vote 1 and 2 that are taking place that we have to keep in consideration. Mashila, can we send a notice of activity later on?
Yeah, we'll definitely do that, and have in mind the invite from the other committee, Communication and Digital Technologies, for a joint meeting on the 22nd, but we'll talk about that. But we'll send that notice, say.
So, Honorable Wakelin, if you can just, I will send notification out later on today about notice of activity. But you can consider today at least half day, half day. Just say we give discount when it matters. But honorable members, that concludes today's session. I want to thank all the honorable members. Thank you to COSATU for their submissions. We will then take the matter going on from there. Thank you very much. We will then convene again next week. Good luck with all the debates. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Long live the Chair.
Thanks, Chair.